You're listening to CX Passport, the show about creating great customer experiences with a dash of travel talk. Each episode, we'll talk with our guests about great CX, travel, and just like the best journeys, explore new directions we never anticipated. I'm your host, Rick Denton. I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport. Let's get going. Have you created a trending hashtag? One that captures an entire community's attention each day? A daily moment that generates great discussion and ideas, both the serious and the comical? Maybe you followed one. So think about the experience that goes into something like that. That's how today's guest, Jeremy Watkin, Director of Customer Experience and Support at NumberBarn, and I came to know each other. Jeremy stewards the great hashtag CXQOTD, or CX question of the day. If you're in customer experience arena of any flavor and you're not following and engaging with this on Twitter, I highly recommend it. I've learned quite a bit about customer experience, and I've also just simply been entertained through the conversations that take place each day here. Thinking about his day job, when you're the director of customer experience and support at a company of 30 people, you really get involved in all aspects of customer experience. It'll be fun to get Jeremy's perspective on this today. When Jeremy and I talked earlier, he had so many travel stories that I'm not sure which ones we'll cover today. I love that global perspective. Jeremy, welcome to CX Passport.
Thank you, Rick. It's great to be here today.
Let's have a little bit of fun here. And listeners, I said this to Jeremy earlier. There's a major thunderstorm blowing through my North Texas region. So if you hear some booms and you hear that, let's just consider it the fun ambient noise of Texas in November. And we'll see if, as long as the power stays on, I think we'll keep recording, Jeremy.
It is sunny and 74 in San Diego. I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
I think we're going to end the podcast here.
Yeah.
1 minute in and I'm out. That's it. Forget about it. I'm getting on a plane to Phoenix tomorrow, so at least it'll get a little better. But hey, let's start with your work at NumberBarn. In the intro, I mentioned it was 30 employees. Now, we often talk about the big brands when we're talking about customer experience, but the reality is most businesses, certainly in the US, but also around the globe, they're just not massive. They're small. They're medium-sized businesses. And this is the cliched roll up your sleeves delivery of customer experience. So if I'm thinking about just one element, voice of the customer, what does a practical voice of the customer approach look like to you?
So I think there are a few facets to that, Rick, that when I think about it at a small company like ours, we still refer to ourselves as startup.
Yeah.
We have surveys where we listen to customers. We obviously, my team is talking to customers every day, mostly in writing, but so those conversations are happening. And when I think about voice of customer, it's really about listening to those conversations. It sounds silly to even have to define voice of customer. Customers are talking. Are we listening? One of my favorite ways to listen, that I spoke about this recently, and somebody thought it was cool, so I'm going to repeat it. Is we listen anytime we have to say no to a customer. As a startup, we're some days we're fighting for survival, and
Right.
So if we have to say no to a customer, maybe that's an opportunity to figure out how we can say yes instead. Could be a bug in our system. Our system's not working the way it should be. It could be a feature request that they're asking for that, if enough customers ask for it, maybe we should do something about it.
I like that idea. It reminds me a little of the whole improv world, that you never, ever are supposed to, in improv, negate someone. So no, and those sorts of elements, it's always yes and. And so almost in that same vein, if a customer identifies some challenge, okay, yes, that's a challenge, and here's what we're going to do about it, as opposed to no, we can't do that for you. What, like on just a practical layer, with these customers with all these voices that want to be heard and acted upon, how did you get started? How did NumberBarn get started? Because you're not going to probably go out there and have the fanciest and slickest tools, but how can somebody get started in that listen and act approach to voice the customer?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to recognize that the information's already there. Yeah, I come from a contact center background, so there are, what's our ticket, but we probably have about 4,000 tickets in a month.
Okay.
And how can you dive into that in a sustainable way that allows us to understand what customers are saying and then how often they're saying it. So I think the challenge is, and when I'm talking to a room of contact center professionals where they're handling 100,000 interactions in a
Right.
month or more, like the challenge is even greater. And that's where it's maybe you need to bring in analytics tools. But
Mm.
I think simple things, if you're a small team, you can use things like macros, which are kind of like canned responses,
Yeah.
but you can like apply tags to certain ticket
Hmm.
types and find some ways to narrow down different issues and then use that as your launching point to then learn what customers are saying about those issues. And then you can even get into we're a phone number, we're all about phone numbers at NumberBarn.
Makes
And
sense.
so we do a lot of number porting, which is a super exciting thing to learn about. Number porting numbers in and out all the time. And once you know what customers are saying, you can start mapping out the journey from A to Z in that porting process and start improving some of those things. But yeah, I think you don't have to wait for some crazy piece of technology to start doing that. It's as simple as opening up your ticketing system or your phone system and start reading and listening.
Yeah. And that reminds me of when I was at a larger company, but a smaller team that had not yet tapped into the larger tools that existed inside of that company. So we did exactly what you're describing. We just started reading what the verbatims. This was a survey-based area of voice of the customer that we were looking at. To be clear, survey and voice of the customer are not the same thing. Voice of the customer is larger than that, just like you said. But exactly that. We just started reading and trying to learn and using that as listening. And what I like hearing out of what you're saying there is it isn't well, we can't do that whole voice of the customer thing. We can't do that customer experience thing because we're just too small. No, right from the beginning, you're talking about getting out there and just start with doing something.
Yeah, absolutely. And surveys are a great place to start.
Yeah, they're a good place to start. You know what? There's a thread here that I want to pull out in something you said. You said, I can't believe we're having to even talk about what voice the customer is. What do you mean by that? I want to poke at that a little bit. I think there's some interesting thought there.
Okay, so I had a CX question of the day. It's been a couple months, I guess, where I asked what are some things in customer experience that we pay lip service to and don't actually do anything. And I'm totally picturing I don't know if you've seen the movie What About Bob, when Bob like takes this book called Baby Steps and like doesn't read a thing about it and just
Uh,
starts applying baby steps to his life. I feel like that's what voice of customer is like, where it's easy to say we're listening to the voice of the customer, or because we send a survey out every so often that we have a voice of customer program. But I think um, we fail sometimes to actually systematize it and build out a full
yeah,
comprehensive program that is like at the end of the day you can say, yeah, I have a pretty good finger on the pulse of what my
yeah.
customers are saying and feeling and thinking and doing ultimately.
This is your captain speaking. I want to thank you for listening to CX Passport today. We've now reached our cruising altitude, so I'll turn that seatbelt sign off. While you're getting comfortable, hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. Love it if you'd tell a friend about CX Passport, leave a review so others can discover the show as well. Now, sit back and enjoy the rest of the episode.
You are speaking to my heart. I was not intending to say this during this episode, but I'll say it again. It's my usual phrase: stop, survey, and score, start, listen, and act. And it's amazing how many companies think that voice the customer is a survey, and then you celebrate a little score result at the end of that survey. And it's not. It really is doing that listen and act, the things that you're describing. And that this piece of the conversation gets me to thinking about the fact that so much of what we hear in the customer experience world are these big ideas, these big initiatives, the large ideas, novel and innovative ideas. But it does seem like through these, we're missing out on the basics. And I see a pendulum shifting in the conversation, at least online, the conversation, that the pendulum is shifting back to that focus on the basics of customer experience and every flavor of what I mean when I say customer experience. Why do you think companies are failing on those basics? And what do you think they can do to get better?
Well, I think it's as simple as putting in the time to actually do it, realizing that it's important. One thing that we do without fail at NumberBarn is anytime a customer, our main survey is a customer satisfaction survey that's transactional, so it's after an interaction. And without fail, if a customer says they're dissatisfied, that ticket gets reopened. And right now it gets assigned to me. Our manager also jumps in there. So every one of those gets a response, and every one of those gets categorized. So at the end of the month, we can track what happened. But it doesn't happen all the time. But I've had, it's such a great opportunity to turn a customer around.
Oh, gosh,
and that doesn't happen all the time. But what does happen all the time, if we get any sort of verbatim or response from the customer, is we learn how to do something better. Yes, there are customers that are unreasonable, but they're few and far between. Usually we come away with some insight on some process that needs to be improved, or some bit of documentation that needs to be updated, or maybe it's a area of our product that we need to enhance, or maybe a feature we need to add. But it's a discipline. I at our company that amounts to maybe 3 to 5 customers a day. That's probably too much. Yeah, somewhere in there though. Sometimes it might be 5 if we're having a bad day.
Something really goes off the rails.
But yes, somebody in your organization has to be assigned to doing that.
Something you said in there, and it was this, and I'd have to listen to it again to get the exact phrase, but basically it was, the way to get back to the basics is just do the basics. And I think there's so much in that companies are wanting to go after the shiny new object, and it's sexy to do the new program. And it's fascinating to have a big conference room and a big, new sort of focus on customer centricity or whatever, pick your buzzword of the moment. And it's not all that sexy to just open up what your customers are saying and realize, oh my gosh, that's broken. Let's just go fix that thing. Or let's offer some sort of new service or new product that is something that they've been clamoring for. And it all stems from voice of the customer, like you're describing, is what are you doing to actually listen? And then what are you doing to act on it?
When you mentioned buzzwords, my buzzword was wow. We've seen viral stories, we've read viral stories, we've seen the videos on YouTube, and those are great. And I've certainly chased wow in my life, but I can't tell you how often when I respond to a negative CSAT survey and say, hey, we heard you, how often the customer responds and says, I was fairly certain that nobody would respond.
Jeremy, that reminds me of something that I've actually experienced a couple times, specific to the rental car industry, that I have had. When you travel a lot, sometimes there's a negative scenario, and I will fill out the survey because, my gosh, I'm a good CX guy. Of course, I'm going to do that. And I will get the canned response back. Oh, thank you so much for reaching out to us. I'm the head of this management team in this location, and we've heard your concerns and we want to do something about it. We're going to improve our process, whatever it is. Reach out to me if you have any questions. So I reach back out to them and I say, hey, here's what's went wrong. Let me talk to you a little bit more about it. And they ghost me. And so I almost wonder if even just what you're describing there, that response back to the customer, if it's not delivered in an authentic way, then it's just another buzzword. It's just another way to piss off a customer, as opposed to what could be, like you're describing in NumberBarn, an authentic way of creating a new touch point with a customer that could actually delight them and restore their relationship to something greater.
Yeah, I think, and I think the focus has to be on sustainability. We have had initiatives where we had our team, like those negative CSATs, reopen to a team member and have them handle it. But I found sometimes in the contact center, people will start to take it a little bit personally
Oh
when they
yeah.
think they did everything they could, but then they got a negative CSAT. So I pulled away from that, but I have seen companies, larger operations they reopened it, and they had a really customer centric team that would say, I realized maybe we didn't fully hit the mark on our response. Let's give it another try. And that's something I would like to revisit at some point. So it's not following on a couple people, and
Yeah.
that authenticity is something that we can actually scale.
I think that's something that's good about being at a smaller company, that you have that opportunity to do something smaller like that. Now I'm thinking about I mentioned CX question of the day. And I want to talk to you about that because that's how you and I got to know each other. It's such a fun and engaging way. And I sometimes ebb and flow with my engagement with it, but it's so great and it's out there daily. Why did you start it? I'm curious about why you chose to do this. And I'm also kind of, what's the value that you get out of it? Because you're putting a lot of work into this.
Okay, so this might be in the weeds just a little bit, but I've been a part of some really vibrant Twitter chats in the past where it was like you show up for an hour a week and the moderator posts questions and people respond to each of the questions, and they're great discussions and also just like a great way to meet people, other people in the industry.
Mhm.
I was a part of one called ICMI chat that ran for 5 years. I feel like it was like 5 years.
Mm.
It was a good run, and just with some personnel changes that it died. And but I also realized like 1 hour a week isn't always doable for certain
Yeah.
people. So I was and it was right around, right at the start of the pandemic, and I was like, how can we stay connected? What's a good way to stay connected? Um, and so I was like, let's try, instead of an hour long ICM hour long Twitter chat every week, let's try a 2 minute long post on CX that asks a question and encourages people to respond. So you'll see it. I record a very quick video. I've been told that I need to get a gimbal so that I don't make people seasick when I'm walking around. So I've tried to like be more stationary of late.
Oh, I like your walking ones. Ignore the gimbal people. I'll give you feedback the other way around. Go out there, wander around. But anyway,
I really wanted to do something where others would feel like, oh, I can just turn my camera on and record a response.
yeah.
I quickly learned that I needed to tag people, and so I actively, I have a list of almost 200 people that have engaged on Twitter that I kind of randomly tag people, depending on the subject matter.
Mhm.
But yeah, you'll see some days are clunkers, but I'd say on average we get between 5 and 10 people responding.
Yeah.
And kind of as an extension, I'm also a part of a Slack community called CX Accelerator, and it's been a great way to also introduce people to that community. And
Ah, yeah.
CX Accelerator they're not selling anything. It's just a community of CX
Mm.
professionals. I think there's 3,000 plus in there. And so that's kind of how I did it. I've wanted to quit a couple times on CX question of the day, but then I think things that give me life are when a lot of people respond. Other things would be, we've had other people, probably a dozen or more people step in and pitch their own questions and
Yeah.
host, and I love that. And anybody listening that engages, I would love for you to, if you have burning CX questions that you want to ask, it's a great format to
Yeah.
ask it. And, yeah, I'm certainly grateful that I met you through that, Rick.
Well, thank you. I obviously feel the same is true in reverse. And that is true, listeners. If you got an idea, Jeremy's very open to other guests, and the questions are all over the map. They obviously stay flavored in the CX arena most of the time. Sometimes they're just flat out fun. One of the things I do like about the community is it's global. One of the, in fact, it almost makes it a 24-hour response cycle, because by the time we're starting to wind down, then Australia picks up, and then Asia starts to pick in after that. So it makes me think of the travel stories that you and I kind of touched on a little bit. So I don't know where we're going to go with this, but you mentioned a short-term mission program with summer in Hawaii, a 3-week trip to Australia, 3 weeks in Nigeria, 3 weeks in Bangladesh. And that's just our casual kind of discussion. I am kind of curious through the stories, how has travel changed your life perspective? And if it's influenced even the way you approach customer experience?
Yeah, when I was thinking about this, I went back to my Australia experience, and the way those trips were structured, we weren't staying in resorts most of the time. Well, Australia is not roughing it by any stretch. Um, Nigeria and Bangladesh are roughing it if you don't have a generator
Right.
to give you reliable power. But so Australia, we actually stayed, me and another guy, we stayed in a bachelor pad. We ate Weetabix and toast with Vegemite on it for breakfast in the morning.
Okay.
Um, and I don't think I would have experienced that if I had stayed at whatever resort in Sydney or something like that. But I think that's what I loved about those experiences was the chance to be in people's homes. And
Yeah.
we played soccer. I learned, I think I forgot most of what I learned, but I learned how to play rugby a little bit while I was there. And it was and I was there right around the Sydney Olympic Games.
Oh,
So we
neat.
did get to like see some of that a little bit, um, but really we got to just get to know the locals.
Hmm.
And I think every one of my trips has been like that, where got to meet the locals, got to eat the food. So Nigeria and Bangladesh, when I think about those places, like I did stay a couple places that had generators, but then I was at other places where like the power will go off at some point in the middle of the night, the fan stops working, the
Ooh,
mosquitoes start buzzing in your ear.
yeah.
Like, is this the time where I hope my malaria medication kicks
Oh
in?
gosh.
But applied to CX, like um there's just a strong theme of learning how to walk in other people's shoes. It just um you develop empathy for people and realize like you can't always get that unless you actually share a meal with somebody.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the most valuable CX lesson I got from that.
Clearly, if you're having to experience mosquitoes buzzing around your ears, wondering if your malaria medicine is working, staying in bachelor pads. Yes, I totally am with you. Some of my best experiences are exactly that, when it's backpacking and you're totally immersed in the culture and going at travel that way. But it can also be nice to take a break. So please join me here in the first class lounge. Enjoy a little break. We'll move quickly here and hopefully have a little bit of fun. What is a dream travel location from your past?
Well, my wife and I got to go to Italy,
Oh,
I
nice.
think in 2010. And if I could do it again, we hiked the Cinque Terre along
Oh,
the,
neat.
is that
Yeah.
the Italian Riviera? And we did that in a day, and I really wish we had done it in a week, because I did a lot of walking on that trip and would have liked to do a little bit more just eating and hanging out by the ocean.
That's the reason why you do all the walking, is so that then you can enjoy the eating and everything
Yeah.
that goes with that. Burn all that off between those towns. Well, that's a beautiful place. I'm glad you got to do that. Looking forward, what is a dream travel location you've not been to yet?
Okay. It definitely revolves around fly fishing. So,
Okay.
I thought about Alaska, I thought about New Zealand, but then I landed on Patagonia. I've
Oh,
seen a few
yeah.
documentaries there, and would love to hike and catch some giant brown trout.
I really want to go there. And I've said that to a lot of guests, and I actually mean it every time they talk about a place that I haven't been. There's something about Patagonia that really is capturing. I think it's the openness, the remoteness, the what I perceive to be peace and tranquility there. I hope that you do get that chance to do some fly fishing there. I bet it'll be amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned how you don't really connect with a culture unless you sit down and have a meal with someone. So, what's your favorite thing to eat?
I'd say it's really a tie between Thai food and sushi.
Oh
I
yeah.
love those genres a whole lot, and I'm the only person in my family. One of my kids does, but yeah. So if I'm on my own, that's where I'm going.
You're heading over there. Thankfully,
Yeah.
I've got sushi lovers in my family. The Thai, though, it tends to be more me than others, but it is nice when you've got that chance. You're like, okay, I'm by myself. I'm going to go get that. Now, on the other side, what is a thing your parents forced you to eat, but you hated as a kid?
Okay, oddly enough, it's still in kind of the Asian genre.
Okay.
Water chestnuts. My mom had a major stir fry phase at one point in my life, and I've made peace with them since then, though.
Jeremy, you're the only other person I know. Well, actually, my daughter, she's kind of like me where I just don't like them that much. Now, it's not that I would refuse to eat them as a kid or anything like that, but I always just never really understood the appeal of water chestnuts. So you and I, one more reason that we like each other. So, all right, you've done all these travels. What is one travel item, not including your phone, that you will not leave home without?
Okay, back to fly fishing. I love my six-piece backpacking fly rod. I'm committed to more and more taking that with me and figuring out where I can fish and seeing, what fish are there that are to be caught.
Man, I love that idea of just having your rod with you as you travel. That does sound just nice. Hey, I'm on a business trip. I'm going to see what I might be able to pull out of the water. That's great. Let's actually go back to that work world. I did have a former CX Passport guest, Jim Tincher, talk to me about there were customer experience leaders that he interviewed that never talked with customers. And you talked earlier in the show about how you saw it as your role to engage directly with customers. And I love that. I love that, getting directly in touch with the customers. What have you gotten out of that? How does staying in tune with the customer, in touch with them at that layer, really help you ultimately create a great experience?
Okay, so for somebody that grew up in the contact center doing customer support, I think let's just acknowledge that we all fantasize about never having to talk to customers again. Um, but the really hard part about that is it's really difficult to know what they're saying if you're not talking to them.
Funny how that
Sorry,
works.
that sounds too simple.
But Jeremy, it is too simple, and yet it's the reality of companies. So you're totally right.
Hey, yeah, I think the balance I'm getting better at, now that I'm in my starting my third decade in this work, is, when I worked in the contact center, I talked to customers all day, every day. So if a customer has a problem and I can't solve it, I'm lighting the office on fire trying to solve their issue.
Yeah.
The balance that I've had to learn, as I move more into CX and out of just customer support, is the ability to step back, and look for trends, pull threads. Like, if one customer is having this issue, how can I get my whole team to talk? How can I plumb our all of our interactions and figure out how often customers are saying it, so I can then prioritize and state my case for the folks that aren't in CX, that are in other areas of the company that I need to actually do stuff to fix the issue.
Do you find that because you're talking directly with the customers, does it make it easier? I feel like I'm setting you up with this answer. I should ask it more neutrally, but do you find it easier then to communicate that to your wider company audience, that it's not Jeremy speaking, but rather customer said X?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps with it's tempting sometimes to come in with too many numbers, and it definitely helps with the balance to have it's that weird balance. It's how do you come in with enough numbers and enough of the story so they can feel what the customer feels, but also see that it's having an impact on our bottom line, or could have a positive impact on the bottom line.
That's right. That's right.
Something about it. I go
And
negative too quickly sometimes.
Well, but it tends to be in a lot of our business mentality at times, especially in the customer experience type world. Oh, something broke. Well, no, something was really delightful. Let's repeat and amplify that as another part. And you also said something really vital, and that is, what's the bottom line? It's great if we're creating wonderful experiences, but they have to impact the bottom line. And those of us in the CX world believe that and see it in reality, not just some faith-based belief, but actually truly have seen examples where by focusing on customer experience, real business, tangible business results show up. And I mean, I think we've seen that conversation in the CX question of the day. And so as I'm looking at the clock, realizing we're kind of coming to the end of our time here, I want to close out with CX question of the day. And I've got to imagine that you've heard all sorts of things. You're paying attention on a daily basis. So you've gotten your customer experience wisdom, you've gotten your story, you've got some comedy. What's one nugget that you've gained from CX question of the day that you'd want the listeners to know? It could be wise, it could be strange, it could just simply be intriguing.
So I mentioned that ICMI chat that I was a part of, and ICMI they talk about CX, but they're very contact center.
Right.
And my background is very contact center. And I think when I think about CX question of the day, as I start putting the CX hashtag out there instead of contact center, I realize I'm starting to talk to marketing and HR and people from product, people who care about the user experience, engineers, all these people in all different areas of the company and organization, that all care about CX, and realizing that I've known customer service is just one piece of the CX pie, but CX question of the day has really helped me to hear from those perspectives and understand, like, at the end of the day, how can I better influence our marketing team at NumberBarn? If I can interact and understand how some of those folks are thinking and what they're concerned about, what metrics they want to see, what that just helps me do my job better. And that's, it's more, CX question of the day is more about learning than it is about clicks and likes and all that stuff.
And I think it comes through, like, and I'm not just blowing sunshine up your fanny here. I think it comes through, and when you look at it, that it does seem to be an authentic discussion of and sharing of ideas there. And I can really appreciate what you answered there, in that it's not so much a specific nugget that was learned, but rather the awareness that customer experience is this larger entity. Too often we try to slice and dice it into all these tribes of CX and what does that look like, but ultimately the customer didn't care. It's their experience that they're receiving, and the idea of figuring out how to work it all together is highly valuable. And I agree with you that that's something that I've seen out of that CX question of the day. So if folks want to learn more about you, if folks want to learn more about CX question of the day, or learn more about NumberBarn, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so definitely check out numberbarn.com. Follow me on Twitter at JT Watkin, or connect with me on Twitter. I'm not looking for followers. I'm looking for people to connect with.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
Same with LinkedIn. I do blog also on customerservicelife.com, probably not as regularly as I'm kind of viewing CX question of the day as more of a microblog. So
yeah.
My long form writing has suffered just a little bit, but
well, Jeremy, I'm going to get all of that in the notes, but I chuckle with you because I feel the same way, that I used to post more actively on LinkedIn, but then I realized that CX Passport has become sort of my conversation with the CX world. And selfishly, I get learning out of it each time. So I'm enjoying the heck out of it. Jeremy, it's been wonderful talking with you today. A great discussion around customer experience. Again, listeners, go out there and start to engage with hashtag CXQOTD on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and have that connection. But Jeremy, thank you today. It was a delight talking with you.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. Make sure to visit our website, cxpassport.com, where you can hit subscribe so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, you can check out the rest of the EX for CX website. If you're looking to get real about customer experience, EX for CX is available to help you increase revenue by starting to listen to your customers and create great experiences for every customer, every time. Thanks for listening to CX Passport, and be sure to tune in for our next episode. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.